hypocritical, since during his life he managed to get on my mother's and my nerves. His addiction to alcohol lasted as long as I can remember, and if others, having abused alcohol, usually try to come home and go to bed as soon as possible, then with my father everything was completely different. Every evening, more precisely, every night, everything developed according to approximately the same scenario. Deep after midnight, having had a good ride, he returned home. He took out the keys and tried in vain to get them into the keyhole, but after several unsuccessful attempts, he ended up knocking on the door with his fist so loudly that my mother and I would definitely wake up and let him in. As a rule, my mother immediately ran to open the door so that the loud knocks would not wake up the neighbors. After this, the head of the family, fueled by alcohol and arguments that popped into his drunken head, tried to provoke a scandal. He expressed suspicions of infidelity to my mother, reproached her for not appreciating him. From time to time, the dishes broke. Sometimes even the mother got it, but in the end, everyone went to bed in silence, and in the morning they pretended as if nothing had happened in order to avoid escalating the conflict. All this lasted until the balls were filled with water. He lost his balance and fell under the tram right at the stop. The funeral passed off relatively unnoticed. No one even sympathized with us, and after that, everyone quickly got used to a quiet, calm life. However, I will remember that night for the rest of my life. At about 1 in the morning, I woke up from the fact that through complete silence, I could hear someone picking the keyhole. I was completely alone in the apartment at the time because my mother was on shift that night. The first thought I had was that robbers were trying to break into our apartment. Instead of taking the phone and calling the police, since I had never done this in my life, even when my dad once threatened my mom with a kitchen knife, I decided to go to the peephole and see at least the number of intruders. I quietly crept up and leaned my eye against the crack, but despite the fact that it was light in the entrance, I didn't see anyone there. Perhaps the thief squatted down and picked the lock, but as soon as I thought about it, the grinding noise on the well stopped, as if the one who was there sensed me approaching and hid. But then, a second later, I heard a strong blow on the door, which seemed to throw me back, and I fell on my butt. It was followed by another series of equally strong blows, all of them in the upper third of the door. Again and again, blow after blow. The heat that rushed through my trembling hands seemed to permeate me all with vile hot thorns. I couldn't breathe normally. Nausea mixed with pain in the lower abdomen made me want to die quickly. I have never experienced such wild animal fear. I don't remember how long this loud, insistent rumble lasted, because about an eternity after the fall, I passed out. The next morning, my mother found me in the hallway when she returned. She didn't immediately understand what had happened to me, but she was terribly scared when she found her daughter on the rug in only a nightgown. After I told her everything, her only answer was, "It's good that you didn't open it." I was sitting now, reading stories, and came across a couple of stories about strange calls. I would like to briefly tell you mine. In the fall of 2009, I also had something similar. I sat at home with my cat and didn't bother anyone. They rang my doorbell at about 11:30 p.m., twice with 2 short rings. I immediately prepared a sending speech because I was sure that it was the neighbor downstairs, a drunkard, who had come again to try to borrow money. And on my floor, there is one common door for 2 apartments. There is no peephole in it, so I didn't even ask who was there when I opened it, since I am quite confident in my abilities, and I had no doubt that it was a drunk neighbor. I open it. It's empty. Only the wind is blowing through the entrance. Some kind of infection. In November, opened the window in the entrance. I stood for about 10 seconds, looked down between the railings. Of course, I didn't see anything. I had nowhere to look higher, since I live under the roof itself, on the 9th. I even went down half a floor to the garbage chute to see if anyone was hiding there, and all this time I was at a loss. If a neighbor came, he would wait until I opened it. It was in his interests. Moreover, it only took me 7 to 8 seconds to open the door. It couldn't have been one of my friends, since there was no sound from the elevator. and our elevator is noisy. The hooligan kids who ring the doorbell and run away are, in any case, already sleeping at home or playing in CS on the grid. I am a peaceful person and do not hold high positions, so it is unlikely that any enemies wanted to scare me or attack me. And what's most ominous, in our entrance, noise sensors are installed on lamps on each floor. When our wonderful elevator moves up and down, the lamps light up one after another each time and stay on for about 15 to 20 seconds. When someone walks, it's the same thing. You don't even have to stomp. The sensors react to normal steps. He probably won't react unless he's sneaking or flying on tiptoes in check shoes. So, when I went out into the entrance and looked down, I was immediately very alarmed by the fact that the lamp was on only on the first floor. It never goes out there at all. This meant that no one had gone downstairs for at least the last 30 seconds, neither on foot nor by elevator, but the one who called couldn't have screwed through the open window. I very much doubt that the problem was in the call, since there were essentially 4 abrupt calls and not one long one. And then the cat added fuel to the fire. He is friendly, sociable, and quick as water in the toilet. Usually, as soon as I open the door, I immediately try to run out into the corridor and look at this huge world. And this time, when I was already coming back from the entrance, I looked. He was sitting in the apartment and didn't take a step beyond the threshold, just staring intently through the crack from behind the door, babbling something on his cat, and looking somewhere in the entrance, in the darkest corner of the landing near the elevator. A chill ran down my spine. I turned around, and of course, I didn't see anyone there, but I admit, my courage was diminished. I closed the door as quickly as possible, first the common door, then the door to the apartment, and somehow it immediately became calm. I'm not superstitious, but there is an opinion that in this way all sorts of evil spirits are trying to get into the house. I don't even know if this is possible. I won't lie, it seems like there haven't been any significant bad changes in my life since then, but still, unpleasant thoughts came into my head that time. This happened at night, still in shock. I like to stay at home alone. On this day, I was lucky. My parents went to visit old friends. These friends of ours will definitely not let them go until the morning. That's why I love them. I understood that I also had my dead, lazy night at my disposal. And here I am standing on the balcony with nothing to do. I was about to leave, but then I felt the gaze of a man from the yard on me. That is, he looked up at me. I don't know who it is, but you must admit, it's not very convenient to look at the 9th floor. He was a little strange. His neck was so curved as if it had no bones. It certainly looked creepy. I wanted to somehow dispel the strange situation and stuck my tongue out at him. He walked towards my entrance. I thought that he had gone home, but then I heard the intercom ring. Then I became really scared. I closed the balcony and sat down at the computer, trying to forget this incident, but it occupied more space in my head, and I could not do anything. Then I heard the bell again, but the bell was already at the apartment door. It was an impudent, long call that a well-mannered person would not allow himself to make. I was confused, took my mobile phone and started calling my mother, but she didn't answer me, probably didn't hear me. After sitting for about 20 minutes in complete silence, I slowly tried to approach the door and look through the peephole. Now I'm already near the door, approaching the peephole. The man stood and looked straight into my eyes on the other side of the door. He started breaking on the door and yelling in an inhuman voice. God, I just couldn't move. I was just glued to the floor. Then I fell and crawled into the room. She closed the door and, choking with tears, began to call her mother. Of course, she wouldn't have heard me, but nothing else came to mind. Why didn't the neighbors hear that some crazy person was yelling at the whole entrance? After all, I needed them. The screams stopped, but I didn't sleep that night. I heard the shuffling of his feet and the occasional knocking of his fist on my door. My parents arrived in the morning. This never happened to me again. Of course, I told my parents everything. Now they never leave for the night without me.